Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldron. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, the 13th, March 13th, 2020. Time for yet another show, despite the bad omens. I don't know how many more we can get. Major plague sweeping across the nation. No toilet paper on the shelves. I think that's supposed to be a problem. I don't know. Whatever. It's been fun times. And now it's Friday the 13th to top it all off. And if you don't believe in that, maybe the Ides of March is more your speed. That's, of course, coming up over the weekend. And what an exciting weekend. It's back down to pick up my son from college, who I just dropped off from spring break, from which I had picked him up the week before. So 3 weeks in a row, 3 weekends in a row, now dedicated to shuttling him back and forth from this place. But wow, it's pretty amazing what's going on. But yeah, our public schools closed. His university eventually decided to go to online classes, but optional as to whether or not to leave campus during that time. So interesting option for them to take, but they had already had their spring break, so they didn't have the spring break clean out to lean on the way some of the other schools do. I think if they're suspending classes, but the first week of classes, everyone was going to be gone anyway. It seems like less of a burden. But they've just been out for a week, and now they've just come back for their first week of classes, and now they're taking off again. So, I don't know. Anyway, some question as to whether or not he wanted to stay on campus. He's not that far away, and, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. By the way, I mean, those guys are drowning in hand sanitizer as it is. So, that's just a thing at his school, and maybe at all schools now, for all I know. I'm not visiting a whole lot of them. There's hand sanitizer dispensers at the door of every dorm, certainly. I don't know whether they're at every academic building the same way or not. But somebody has a hand sanitizer fetish there at the school and is imposing it on everyone. And I guess everybody probably thought it was a kind of dumb thing until about a week or two ago when they suddenly realized what a great thing, what a great service this university is providing. Well, anyway, so maybe they figured if all the kids are using all the hand sanitizer, they can stay on campus. But there's not a whole lot of point if all your classes are online. Although I will say, I think as a kid, I might have thought that would have been fantastic. What a great compromise that I don't have to get up and go to classes. I can still take the classes, although I wish they would. Yeah, I wish they'd get rid of those too. But living on campus without the downer of having to leave the room anyway to go to classes. I assume that they meet online at the same times that they were going to meet otherwise. Although I guess with the limitations on physical classrooms removed, I suppose it's possible to reschedule anything. And I guess if everybody hates having a 8 o'clock class, you could make it a 10 o'clock class because you don't need to schedule a classroom for yourself. Though presumably professors have a preference for one or the other. Anyway, it seems like an interesting development. And I was wondering whether he was going to opt to stay or leave. On the other hand, of course, you get to come home and, well, free laundry and probably someone else doing it for you, probably better meals, et cetera, et cetera. But I sort of thought maybe the discipline of staying on campus would keep you more focused on work. But a rather realistic assessment, I thought, from my son. Just some more personal news. Deciding that it would be awfully difficult if you never left your room for class and you know, there was pretty much very little reason because of social distancing to leave the room otherwise. His roommate lives very close to campus and would in all likelihood take off. He takes off a lot of weekends and is gone. So he'd be like isolated, sitting in his room, no reason to leave even for class, except the only reason to leave is to go eat. And otherwise, you're just sitting, and I mean, he'd be sitting alone in a dorm. That could drive you crazy. But at a minimum, and he's pretty good at that, actually, sitting in his room doing nothing. But at a minimum, it might become difficult to, keep up your classwork schedule and going stir crazy in a dorm room too. I mean, you got much more freedom of movement at home, so sounds like that's what's going to happen. And the more realistic assessment that I alluded to that I thought he had was, if I come home, you guys will be able to bother me and remind me that I'm supposed to be working on things, and as opposed to playing video games online, and you'll force me to do my work. And that might actually be true. I feel bad about this whole thing, though. I feel bad about all the kids who are having to take this option in the middle of, your school career doesn't last all that long. You don't have that much time to do this stuff. I feel bad for graduating seniors who might not be able to go back and have their last couple of months together, or even maybe not have their graduation ceremonies if this thing drags on for any longer. Or, and for that matter, for kids like my son, freshmen, who are just sort of getting used to the idea of being away at school, and then it kind of ends early, and the year is over, and now he'll be taking classes online from home. It's like going to a community college or something, which is not the experience that he was looking for. Because we got a community college that's pretty damn good right around the corner. And believe me, this was news to me when I moved to Virginia. But they're a pretty robust program, and a lot of kids from his high school taking advantage of Virginia's not unique, but relatively unique program. The do 2 years, get your good grades in community college for 2 years, and they now have automatic acceptance to the state universities to finish a 4-year degree. So a lot of kids have actually opted, people who are good students and who have a pretty good shot at getting the kind of grades you need to do this, going for 2 years at a community college and then finishing your degree at UVA. Not a bad option at all, considering, of course, the tuition fees at the community college. Anyway, so now it's going to feel a lot more like that, but it's not actually going to be that. So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, and I don't know where to find any more hand sanitizer or toilet paper either. I'll tell you what else, though, is going on. An interesting story that caught my eye just moments before coming onto the air here. A tweet directing my attention to a Politico magazine story. Is the tweet still up here? No, I let it scroll away, so I don't know. But I'll tell you the story, or read it to you. It sounded really kind of fascinating. What are people doing in Washington, D.C.? How is Washington, D.C., political Washington, D.C., muckety-muck Washington, D.C., not congressman, but political operative, punditry type Washington, D.C., especially, well, in the part that caught my eye, especially on the Trump side of the ledger. The magazine at Politico offers up this piece here. This town, remember that book? This town faces a lockdown. A city consumed with its own power comes to grips with a force it can't control. That is pretty interesting. Daniel Lipman is the writer here. Let's start out with the story, why don't we? Book parties and air kisses. Setting the scene nicely. I like that. Furrowed brows and panel discussions. Many of the rhythms of daily life in the nation's capital are about creating, if not the reality, then at least the illusion of social intimacy. That's true, right? Selfies with politically famous people is a big deal. How is Washington dealing with the moment, perhaps a very long time, when the new catchphrase is social distancing? So far, the city's biggest patterns haven't been disrupted. Congress is still in session. The federal government has not as yet told most of its employees to stop coming to the office. The White House is still conducting business as usual, sort of, despite Trump's dramatic decision Wednesday night to block travelers from Europe. Sort of, kind of, almost. But the anxiety gripping the rest of the country is percolating through the city, touching its workers, its children, and its parents. And one VIP reception at a time, it's even hitting the circles of political and media elites who've spent their careers assuming the word non-essential doesn't apply to them. The mayor declared a state of emergency on Wednesday, And as the local number of confirmed cases has mounted, a wave of cancellations has swept the city's power events. Henry James famously called Washington the city of conversation. It's now a very stupid conversation, but okay. For the moment, it threatens to be the city of hunkering down. Everything's really slowing down, said Yusuf Al-Otaiba. Remember that name? Yes, you do. He's the ambassador for the United Arab Emirates, an influential player in the city's diplomatic and social landscape. I don't think people want to be around a lot of other people. That's generally true, but especially so now. The virus has already hit some key nodes of the power matrix. 5 people who attended the APAC conference in early March have now tested positive for the virus. So did a wealthy donor who attended the CPAC. I'm sorry. I said APAC conference, right. Or I might have said CPAC conference, but it meant APAC conference. Early in March, that's the 5 people there. And then, of course, the wealthy donor who attended the CPAC conference, the Conservative Political Action Conference at the end of February, leading several Republican lawmakers who came into contact with the infected attendee to quarantine themselves. Why are they not naming this person, by the way? I have been wondering about that. I mean, there's no real reason to have their name, but I was curious, and I was intrigued by the tweets a couple of days ago from a number of people saying, where's Rand Paul? Why isn't Rand Paul outing the CPAC infection vector? He doesn't care about people's privacy, and after all, that person is compromising our national security. And I did see somebody come up with a funny name / hashtag for that. Say, out the sniffle blower. I like that one quite a bit. Anyway, will we ever find out who it is? We found out who the basketball players were. But anyway. All right. Anyway, an Episcopalian church in Tony, Georgetown, told its flock to stay home after the pastor fell ill with the disease. That's how it got out here to my area, Loudoun County. Somebody who went all the way down to Georgetown for whatever reason to go to this church and brought it back with them. Thanks a lot. That's great. Many prominent D.C. figures are members of that church, as it turns out, and so maybe that's it. Anyway, Fred Ryan, the publisher of the Washington Post, called off his annual St. Patrick's Day party for the first time in 20 years. The National Gallery postponed an invitation-only VIP reception for its new Degas exhibit. Wall Street has the Dow Jones Index. Oh, right, yeah, we should check in on that. Futures were down again, of course. Washington is a market of a different kind, though, and by the standards of the things the city values, connectivity, media currency, and perceptions of power, the political capital is heading into a bear market no less than the financial capital. Coronavirus is slamming into D.C.'s political media complex just as the city's equivalent of prom season is due to kick off. The Gridiron Dinner, an annual white tie gathering dating back 135 years, was postponed this week. The leading congressional dinner, put on by the Washington Press Club Foundation and scheduled for March 25th, was also called off. A decision point is looming for the grandest D.C. gala of them all, the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, which should end anyway. Planned for April 25th, a celebrity-studded undertaking that drives an entire weekend of events and unquestionably falls afoul of the city's temporary new health guidelines, which would include, I think, an outright ban on gatherings of more than 1,000 people or something quite like that. Some elite private schools closed early for spring break. Georgetown University switched to remote learning. That's not where my son is, but everybody's doing it. Amtrak has shut down several trains on the This Town heavy corridor between Washington and New York, citing lower demand. Kimball Stroud, an events planner, says her own clients had yet to cancel their plans, but wonders how long that can last. The South by Southwest thing, that to me was like, oh my God, this is real, which is really just a terrible quote. But okay. How are you going to get 30,000 people in one room, she said, referring to her worries about the upcoming political convention slated for the summer. I am panicked because what we do for a living here is have gatherings of people, and we do events and create guest lists, and I think it's going to affect everybody. I'll just let that quote stand. That's just a totally different world. But it's a real thing, and it's a business running gigantic events, some of which are actually important. So, okay. Juliana Glover, a PR maven known for hosting book parties at her Kalorama home. This story's making me ill. Not with coronavirus, but anyway, this is where I live, or nearby. I live outside the city now, thank God, but it was much more palpable inside the city when I lived there in the olden days. But yeah, this is how this town works. And a lot of you are probably from New York or have spent some time there too, and you're used to it, or maybe even L.A. Anyway, Juliana Glover, a PR maven known for hosting book parties at her Kalorama home. I would hit you with the book if you invited me to one of those. Said the virus was rewriting the unspoken rules of social interaction. When you greet someone, you don't shake their hand, and there's no air kiss, and there's no hug, she said. She still had a party Saturday night, but her kids put up a sign with the drawing of the coronavirus on the door saying, please, no hugs/handshakes, but we're happy to see you. Pretty interesting. I would have hidden in the kids' room with them, probably. But kick the kids out because they're germ factories. Margaret Carlson, a decades-long denizen of both Washington journalism and Washington parties, said she's carrying Clorox disinfectant wipes everywhere she goes and avoiding watching films having anything to do with contagion. That's very interesting. Get some goddamn work done, Margaret, and then you won't have any time for watching. I would probably, well, I'm not that fearful, but you know why I haven't watched any films having anything to do with contagion? Because I'm working, and if I'm not doing work, I'm getting myself, my house, my family ready for this thing. But Margaret Carlson has people who does that. So she's got Clorox disinfectant wipes everywhere. By the way, there are none to be had, and there haven't been any for weeks on the shelves. Luckily, I have normally a stockpile of them anyway, but not enough to satisfy me on something like this. I've got alternatives, obviously, but yeah, I guess the stunner to Margaret Carlson is that she has to concern herself with cleaning products. That's something she normally hires someone else to do, I would guess. Anyway, they're also in every store. Every store that I've gone to has had dispensers of disinfectant wipes that you're supposed to wipe, like, if you're going to the grocery store or another store with a shopping cart, wipe off the shopping cart handle and really everything else. I realized this week how many other touch points from which I manipulate a shopping cart. I can't wipe them all, but I'm trying to lose that habit. But if I'm in front of it, I'll grab it by the front and, move it by the metal mesh rather than the handle. It's quite eye-opening, really. But then again, that's another thing that Margaret Carlson likely doesn't do very often for herself. So, whatever. But yeah, you can't get enough Clorox disinfectant wipes. As a matter of fact, I found myself the other day taking some extra disinfecting wipes on the way out of the grocery store so that I could wipe down the car, not the whole car, but the steering wheel and radio buttons and all the various things, the touch points in the car, because they were there and Clorox wipes aren't, and the ones I have to stay at home to clean all the touch points at home. What a world we live in. Anyway, yeah, so now this is also the first time I've ever seen the disinfectant wipe dispenser at the front of any store be out of wipes. That's happening too. Well, it's a good habit. We should all get into it. Most people used to ignore those things, and I used to think the people who wipe down their carts were kind of weird germaphobes, but now we're all making them feel comfortable. We're all in their world now, so I feel good about that. We're helping normalize them, and they ought to be normalized. Not Margaret Carlson, though. Anyway, a recent book party that Margaret attended for Charlotte Alter, whose father, Jonathan Alter, was a longtime Washington correspondent for Newsweek. You've likely heard the name. We've read some things of his, right? Well, his daughter having a book party. Hooray. Anyway, she reflected the city's changing mood. Sorry. It was the first party where it was heavily elbow bump, Carlson noted. I'm so flummoxed by how flummoxed they are that I can't even read this thing. Okay, so it was the first party where it was heavily elbow bump. Anyway, Kristen Ray Secchi, is that how she says her name? It's Cecchi, who does high-end home renovations in D.C., which is why I've never heard of her, noted her surprise at seeing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has been the subject of half-serious prayers from liberals, hoping the 86-year-old, they're pretty serious prayers, hoping the 86-year-old Supreme Court Justice will steer clear of potential exposure to the virus at the Kennedy Center's performance of Samson and Delilah last weekend. While the opera was well attended, she said, the VIP after party definitely was not jam-packed at all. Ugh, I feel ill. The Kennedy Center on Thursday canceled all public performances and events until the end of March. The after party, the opera after party, definitely not jam-packed at all. Barf. Anyway, people feel under siege and are not saying yes to meetings, said journalist Steve Clemens, an omnipresent Washington events hopper, whose foreign travel plans got scuttled due to the virus. Oh yes, that happening too. At a recent party for author Yuval Levin, Clemens said, I didn't eat anything. I'm not eating group foods, buffets, where people are sticking their fingers in it or breathing all over it. I was going to withhold the comments about, barf, because Steve Clemens is a pretty decent guy, right? I follow him on Twitter, and I kind of, I'm not as repulsed, certainly. But then he made me ill with the food and the sticking fingers in it and breathing all over it. But that's something you should be ill at hearing about. Oh, my goodness. Now I'm really going to lose it. Sally Quinn, a fixture of the Georgetown scene, said that social engagements are yielding to other imperatives. She found herself in line, oh my God, at Costco. Blah. She found herself in line at Costco the other day with a big supply of spaghetti and canned sauce, rice and dried beans, and lots of toilet paper, and you're going to need it with all those beans. I don't know why toilet paper, but I guess they're going to run out, she said. On the social front, Quinn said she had held off on sending out invitations for you'll never guess, a book party. Maybe during coronavirus sequestration, I can suspend the non-rule against profanity on the podcast. She's having another goddamn book party. That's profane, some people would say, right? I'm really branching out, everybody. All right, so she held off on sending out invitations for a book party she was planning in May. I will probably send out a save the date if we're all still alive, she said. It would be a mistake to assume that Washington is acting in unison. For every social player burrowing in at home, this is the part that grabbed my attention, there are others who still have scenes to make. Pro-Trump commentator Harlan Hill, why is he even a thing, a person? I can't stand it. Who frequents the Trump Hotel in downtown D.C. 4 or 5 times a week, get a life, said he's seen no thinning of the crowd. They, of course, don't believe in it, right? The Trump Hotel was packed on Tuesday night, legitimately packed, he said. I was shocked, and I hope soon you'll all be ill. I'm supposed to say I don't wish illness on anybody. I'll get back to you if that becomes my sentiment. There were lots of people talking about coronavirus, but I don't think it changed anybody's behavior, he added. In Congress, lawmakers are largely trying to avoid physical contact and have made liberal use of the hand sanitizer machines springing up throughout the building, socialism. The U.S. Capitol this week halted all tours and banned public access to the galleries, authoritarianism. Speaker Nancy Pelosi has insisted that the business of the House will go on, even after a Democratic caucus meeting grew tense Tuesday morning as members peppered the Capitol's attending physician with questions about how to plan for an outbreak, multiple attendees said. Responding to Democrats inside the closed-door meeting, who called for measures like extending an upcoming recess and allowing remote voting, Pelosi said, "We are the captains of the ship. We are the last to leave." An interesting quote, and I think one with which I might even agree. It's a rather unique position, of course, being in Congress, and you are supposed to, I guess, assume a certain amount of risk on behalf of the rest of us. But, of course, there's also the argument that they ought to be leading by example and doing the social distancing, even as important as they are. But certainly the work has to go on because, well, if it doesn't go on, and I don't know how we recover without a national response. I mean, we're trying to figure that out now because the president refuses to give us a national response. But I mean, we can't suspend the work. And of course, for instance, it doesn't do to extend a recess if you haven't done the work. Yesterday, it was briefly reported that Republicans in the Senate planned to set aside the House bills for response to the coronavirus and go on their recess without acting on it. That would be a huge mistake, PR-wise, for them and politically. And I understand that by the end of the day, I thought I saw that McConnell, who was only being sort of obliquely referred to, that McConnell allies were saying that they wanted to just go on the break without voting on the bill. But McConnell, when he finally spoke, I guess had said, yeah, we're not going to do that. And recess will be postponed or suspended until we get some kind of congressional response to the outbreak on record here. So they very nearly took off without doing anything. And it may be that they hang around and end up doing virtually nothing or doing something that even hurts the situation more than anything else, or simply passing things like irrelevant tax cuts. That's always a possibility. But at least they've changed direction on abandoning ship and taking off for a couple of weeks or even more without doing anything. And I'm sure that the members of Congress or the members of this Democratic caucus meeting, I'm sure they had in mind, well, action first, but then perhaps an extended break. And that wouldn't be a terrible idea. All right, well, that's it. We've reached the end of the crazy Politico article. So we're caught up on the social scene here in D.C. We'll catch up on what else is floating around after this. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, what have we got here? There's a few things floating around. One thing I just happened to see, Joshua Holland retweeting a screen grab of what paper would this even be? I don't know. Anyway, the headline from Michael Goodwin, an opinion column here. Trump passes coronavirus test with flying colors. And I'm not really sure what he means here by coronavirus test. Like, I don't think he's actually been tested for the coronavirus. I think he meant the test of handling the situation on behalf of the country and reviewing his speech. And that's obviously a ridiculous assessment of things. But if he were to pass, I was at first I caught my eye because I thought maybe he actually had submitted to testing for the coronavirus. And what an interesting thing it is for Trump supporters to say that you could pass such a test. And like, you did really well on your test. They were trying to say that they've done it before for his half physical that he had that one time. He passed it with flying colors. You're alive. That's flying colors. And of course the color is orange, maybe a little bit of pink around the eyes. But I don't know, it just seems like a garbage thing to say. You know what? I was thinking, I'll set that aside for you to look at in the roundup, but that's just a dumb headline. We don't even need, look, the fact is that there's a headline that said that somewhere. Well, what do you care, really, whether that's true or not? I'm lying to you. Enjoy it. All right. other things happening on a lot of it. And I don't even know where to start. But we'll just make it this, because Kate Sherrill sent it, and why not? That way I can be paying attention to the messages I get. It's a tweet from Judd Legum, who says, "This is it. This is the smoking gun." And it is. And I tried to look at this yesterday, but I think it's an NPR Fresh Air report, and I don't think that there was anything I looked at it last night in or trying to take a look and see if there was anything written that went along with it. But it was a recording of their broadcast, and I can't really just play that 40-minute broadcast thing here. But okay, this is it. The smoking gun is what? Trump suppressed coronavirus testing to keep the numbers low and boost his chances at re-election. This Judd's tweet links to the NPR Fresh Air's Twitter account, which is connected to this thread here, and it begins about 24 hours ago, saying, "Today, how the Trump administration's mismanagement has fueled the coronavirus crisis." And who's the reporter here? Dan Diamond, is that his name? Yes, Dan Diamond of Politico investigated how dysfunction, infighting, and the need to flatter Trump, as always, have caused distractions that slowed the response. Then, of course, a link to the recording for you to listen to. And let's see. Listen, it says, White House knew coronavirus would be a major threat, but response fell short. That's the name of the story. And then they add this. A previous tweet of this quote did not make it adequately clear that it is Trump who did not push for adequate testing, not Secretary of Health and Human Services Azar. Here is the whole quote for context, and let's take a look at the screen grab here, I guess from Dan Diamond's story. In the case of Alex Azar, he did go to the president in January. He did push past resistance from the president's political aides to warn the president the new coronavirus would be a major problem. There were aides around Trump. Kellyanne Conway had some skepticism at times, but that this was something that needed to be a presidential priority. God, she's an idiot. Well, she always was. But at the same time, Secretary Azar has not always given the president the worst case scenario of what could happen. My understanding is that he, President Trump, did not push to do aggressive additional testing in recent weeks, and that's partly because more testing might have led to more cases being discovered of coronavirus outbreak. And the president had made clear the lower the numbers on coronavirus, the better for the president, the better for his potential re-election this fall. So you're all going to die for him. Just thought I'd add that in case you were wondering exactly what was going on. All right, let me put this thing away, and then we'll see whether there's any more written material available on this. I mean, they're grabbing it from somewhere, right? Does the Fresh Air thread lead to a longer written product? Let's see. I don't know. It's still leading to the NPR recording of the piece. And I mean, there's a transcript, but I guess we can't read that whole thing because, like I said, this is a 44-minute piece. But just be aware of that, and I will include a link to, and you can either read the transcript or listen to the piece. But basically, I guess that's the story, right? There's your smoking gun. No testing was going on because Trump thought if you didn't discover the virus being out there, it wouldn't be out there. People would just be dying and it would be their own fault. And screw them, who cares? Now, speaking of the aides surrounding Trump who are doing a terrible job with things, we do now have more confirmation on the earlier speculation of exactly which moronic clowns were responsible for, quote-unquote, writing the, quote-unquote, speech that Trump gave the other day. Washington Post has formalized things, though I think I included some links yesterday for some reporting that was the basis of the speculation that finally was established that Stephen Miller and then Jared Kushner had a great deal to do with putting this so-called speech together. Now a more comprehensive report from late yesterday afternoon/evening in the Washington Post. 10 minutes at the teleprompter. It's very dramatic. Inside Trump's failed attempt to calm coronavirus fears. And it has been that, hasn't it? Failed attempt. By the way, let me just, I can use the phone here, which is relatively handy, just to check in on the stock market. Oh, hey, look at that. Hey, an up morning. Up, now I think I had read last night the futures were down 700 or so, which in the grand scheme of things lately hasn't been bad at all. But so far, a 985 point gain for the Dow on the day. And all of the top stocks out there that most people have an eye on appear to be also having an up day. But I mean, up from way the hell down, of course. But okay, at least we have a positive start to trading for the day. Anyway, let's start with, or get back to the Washington Post here. 10 minutes at the teleprompter inside the whole stupid speech thing. Philip Rucker, Ashley Parker, and Josh Dawsey get the bylines here. In the most scripted of presidential settings, a primetime televised address to the nation, President Trump decided to ad-lib, and his errors triggered a market meltdown. It was difficult to pick up on which parts were ad-lib. It wasn't as obvious as it usually is, but it was clear something was going on. Anyway, his errors triggered a market meltdown because he's got no instinct for anything. He's a moron, and I hate his guts. Can I just say that? I don't know if you're aware of that, but he's an idiot. He's incapable of doing anything of this sort. And, I think it's been obvious to everyone. I mean, a couple people have said it out loud via Twitter that I've seen in the last couple of days. He's just trying to he's trying to BS his way through everything. But now that includes the coronavirus outbreak. He has no clue what to do and no idea how people react to his statements. No one has ever told him, you're a moron, shut up. And so now we have this situation. Of course, he triggered a market meltdown with his ad-libbing. He's terrible at everything. I mean, he's the worst possible president. But as whatever stupid clown kind of businessman he thought he was, obviously he's been a failure at all of that as well. And I don't know. Sometimes, I guess I've been, I don't know what. We've been fooling ourselves for a long time. Nobody thought he was competent, obviously, but we just sort of got away from the daily ritual of reminding ourselves that he has no business, being anywhere near anything important, let alone the presidency. That's ridiculous to consider, which is why I guess we all thought he just couldn't possibly win, because a person like that shouldn't be the president. And, for many people who listen, there's a God. For others who don't believe that that's the case or don't listen, you're entitled to that opinion as well. And you might even be right. Anyway, moving on. So he decides to ad-lib, and his errors triggered a market meltdown. Panicked travelers overseas, yes, and crystallized for his critics just how dangerously he has fumbled his management of the coronavirus. Even Trump, a man practically allergic to admitting mistakes, and I did notice at least one in the speech where he pulled the "and" thing. I think he was trying to say something about combating the virus, and he said, "We are counting and combating the virus," or whatever the line was. It was really amazing to hear again. Like the Wilhelm scream once you realize what that is. So, even Trump, a man practically allergic to admitting mistakes, knew he'd screwed up by declaring Wednesday night that his ban on travel from Europe would also include cargo and trade, and acknowledged as much to his aides in the Oval Office as soon as he'd finished speaking, according to one senior administration official and a second person, both with knowledge of the episode. Jared Kushner, his son-in-law and senior advisor, who has seized control over some aspects of the government's coronavirus response. Seized control. That's so manly. Go, Jared, yeah. Oh, my God. Reassured Trump that aides would correct his misstatement, four administration officials said, and they scrambled to do just that. The president also told staffers to make sure other countries did not believe trade would be affected, and even sent a cleanup tweet of his own. The restriction stops people, not goods, he wrote. It's amazing. I'm curious whether he realized it in his own head when he said it and couldn't figure out a way to correct it right there in his trademark style. This ban will include a total ban on the movement of, what did we say? Of trade and goods, and not stop trade and goods. It's just, I can't make that one work. So instead, he just finishes and says, somebody get out there and tell them the opposite. I mean, it goes without saying here and in this article that a scripted White House Oval Office address cannot have errors like that in it. It doesn't work. Other administration officials rushed to alert the public that U.S. citizens would be exempt from the travel ban after scores of Americans, upon digesting Trump's speech, phoned government offices and raced to airports in Europe out of concern that they would not be able to fly home. Trump's 10-minute Oval Office address Wednesday night reflected not only his handling of the coronavirus, but in some ways much of his presidency, in all ways. It was riddled with errors, nationalist and xenophobic in tone, limited in its empathy, and boastful of both his own decisions and the supremacy of the nation he leads. Futures for the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell in real time with virtually each word Trump uttered, signaling a lack of confidence among investors that he had control of the crisis, or of anything for that matter, and previewing another bloodbath once the market opened Thursday morning. Trump, who believed that by giving the speech he would appear in command, and his remarks would reassure financial markets in the country, was in an unusually foul mood, because he's an unusually foul president, and sounded at times apoplectic on Thursday, he doesn't know what that word means, as he watched stocks tumble and digested widespread criticism of his speech, according to a former administration official briefed on his private conversations. And quite honestly, I would be in favor of allowing every floor trader on the New York Stock Exchange a free punch in the face to Donald Trump at this point. And they'd probably take me up on it too, even those who are Trump supporters. But it's illegal and it won't be allowed, and don't come to the Washington, D.C. area for a number of reasons, not the least of which is you would, could, and should be arrested if you are coming with the intention of assaulting the person who claims to be president. Just in case. This official, though, who was talking about his being apoplectic, like many others interviewed for this story, has a larger vocabulary than the president, and also spoke on condition of anonymity, as the president would say, to share sensitive information or to make candid assessments. My whole thing about punching people in the face, that was anonymous, by the way. So that's off the record or something. Ben Rhodes, who served as a senior White House aide and helped former President Barack Obama script and manage his responses to numerous crises, predicted that Wednesday night's address will stand as, quote, the moment people associate with the fact that Donald Trump failed the biggest test of his presidency. I think we will look back on this as a defining moment of the Trump presidency because it speaks to larger concerns that people already had about Trump, that he can't tell the truth, that he doesn't value expertise, that he doesn't take the presidency seriously enough, Rhodes said. Yeah, all right. As is often the case after Trump gives a major speech, his Republican allies offered a chorus of praise on television and social media for his fantastic speech and decisive actions and unique strength. I wonder whether Trump, in a situation where he knows, he literally, people say he knows and says that he screwed something up in the speech, I wonder what it feels like for him to then get calls from, a bunch of a-hole Republican congressmen who say, what a fantastic speech, sir. Well, I praise you for your decisive action and unique strength. And whether he says, these a-holes, I screwed up, and they're still licking my boots. And part of him, I'm sure, likes that, loves it. The question is whether that overwhelms the part of him that is able to discern, these guys are just terrible people. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, I don't either, but these guys are really bad news if they can't even tell that I screwed up and they're still kissing my ass because even after I screwed up. Or, maybe they're serious. Maybe they really thought, oh, we should be having a travel and cargo ban of everybody, from even American citizens from Europe. What a great speech. It was fantastic. Yeah, well, I'm not doing that. Oh, well, man, I don't know. I'm just curious what goes on inside his, never mind, brain, but whatever. Inside the White House, however, aides and advisors privately acknowledged that Trump failed to accomplish the primary goal of his speech, reassuring the nation, and described it as disappointing and far from his best performance. Trump's speech contained at least 2 errors and a significant omission. He said the travel ban would apply to cargo. It did not. He said the health insurance companies would waive patients' co-payments for coronavirus testing and treatment. And so far, they haven't agreed to do that. Industry officials later clarified that they would waive payments for testing only, not treatment. You don't care about that, right? You just want to know whether you have it and then die. And he did not fully explain the details of his travel restrictions, leaving out the fact that U.S. citizens would be exempt. The president's remarks were devoid of much substantive information on other matters. Trump provided no update for citizens on the spread of the virus, nor on the availability and results of testing. Public health experts have said testing citizens for the coronavirus is essential for identifying new cases and limiting its spread, but the nation has experienced a chronic shortage of test kits after weeks of missteps by the government, or active interference with it by the government. Trump devoted only 2 short sentences to the topic, and they were vague. Testing and testing capabilities are expanding rapidly, day by day. We are moving very quickly. We're not. Oh, wait. We are moving very quickly. There. That was a better impression. Stylistically, the president himself seemed ill at ease in the formal setting, offering a labored, monotone delivery, yes, like 5th grade reading level, from behind the resolute desk, twiddling his thumbs, true, and even in moments struggling to read words on the teleprompter. And I assure you they were in 5,000 point font. One senior administration official said Trump's heart was not in the speech, or perhaps the whole of his heart. WH, not the hole in his heart, but the whole of his heart was in the speech. He just hasn't got any heart. It was jolting, said Julian Zelizer, a presidential historian at Princeton University, where he was one before they closed, I guess. People are naturally scared. People want to see a leader who has a commanding presence. In some ways, the country is worse off after a message like that. In all ways. Julian, just go ahead. Say it. Go ahead, say it. They know. The speech itself was rushed. After weeks of playing down the coronavirus's threat to the United States, which is what he really believed, Trump was reluctant to appreciate the full scope of the crisis on his hands, tiny, tiny hands that they are. But with the markets in free fall, he decided early Wednesday that he wanted to give the televised speech that night. He wanted to save the country. Administration officials said this startled some of his aides. What do you want to do that for? You're terrible at it. And set off a frantic scramble to arrange airtime on television networks, iron out logistics for his delivery, and prepare a draft of what he would say. The officials said, I want to do a thing. Give me some words. This was a real missed opportunity to not just have a couple of sentences in there about how other people need to put partisanship aside and come together, but to really show it, the former senior administration official said, noting that Trump could have sought to rise above the politics of the moment to convey a sense of unity and common purpose. The speech almost writes itself in a way, this person added. It can be kind of formulaic. It's not rocket science. The speech was largely written by Kushner, who's a moron, and senior policy advisor Stephen Miller, who's an evil moron. They're both really evil morons, but Stephen more so than Jared, who were still making tweaks to the text moments before Trump delivered it. Ooh, I'm tweaking it, everybody. I'm such a great tweaker. I mean, I think that might actually be true. But wordsmiths they are, aren't they? Just fantastic. This, according to people familiar with the process, of course. 30 minutes before Trump appeared live on camera, a final draft of his remarks still had not circulated widely within the White House. One of those people said, senior health experts in the administration did not review a final draft of the remarks, according to a senior administration official. They just didn't do any of the work that normally goes into a speech. Speeches like that come off a certain way because of that process. They skip that process because they don't do homework. They don't care what other people think of things. They're winging the presidency. And it's amazing. And quite honestly, I hope they're all burn in hell for it. While Kushner and Miller crafted the remarks, a coterie of other officials were involved in the process and joined Trump in the Oval Office to watch his delivery. One person with knowledge of the speech said they included Vice President Pence, Ivanka Trump, worthless, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. I guess they all really are worthless, but Ivanka Trump doesn't have a job that makes a difference. Get out. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and a sizable group of White House aides. Christopher Liddell, I don't know, Liddell, Eric Ueland, Dan Scavino, Hogan Gidley, real name, Judd Deere, John McEntee, Anthony Ornato, and Nick Luna. Where's the sports liaison Giuliani? What happened to him? Some officials faulted the rushed timeline for the messy speech, which they said could have been delivered even sooner, as it became clear the virus was well on its way to becoming a global pandemic. Yeah, that's a thought. A designation the World Health Organization officially bestowed upon the coronavirus Wednesday. Everyone usually gets Trump where he needs to be within a couple of days, one official said. The problem is we don't have a couple of days. It's interesting, too, because Trump's excuse apparently for not... we haven't discussed this, but it's been reported. He didn't inform... Nobody informed the Europeans about his stupid travel ban before they announced it. And that may have been because they made it up minutes before he said it. Or maybe he didn't even, it wasn't even made up minutes before he said it. He might have made it up on the spot, for all we know. He said it wrong, so why not? It's going to affect trade and goods as well. No, it isn't. What are you, crazy? The exact opposite. Oh, all right, well, then I'll make it up that way instead. So, the Europeans understandably upset, but it may be that the policy just didn't exist before he blurted it out and there was no way to alert anybody. But that's also bad. But his excuse was, well, we had to move quickly. We didn't have time because it takes time to dial all those telephone numbers and tell European leaders that we're going to do this. And he may not have known he was going to do it. That's possible. It doesn't take any time to dial telephone numbers and tell people this stuff. But it's just interesting. The approach to the presidency, as they say, they don't take it seriously enough. They're all like, well, it's difficult to get him to do the right thing, but within a couple of days, we can usually talk him into doing the right thing about something basic, life or death for millions, for instance. That's where we are. You have to drag the president along. Well, it won't be more than a couple of days. A couple of days doubles the number of cases we have. Kushner only recently became involved with the administration's virus response after finishing up world peace, criminal justice reform. What else has he got on his plate? Everything else. China, he's gotten in. Now, fix the coronavirus, Jared. And by the way, there's another story floating around out there about how he did that. We'll get there, I think. So, Kushner only recently became involved in this, beginning to attend meetings, but only a few, in his capacity as a senior advisor, according to officials, but inserted himself more fully as he became increasingly convinced that more tangible action was needed. That is a very, very, very generous reading of what I heard yesterday, which was that he's been on this task force for some time and he doesn't go to the meetings because he didn't give a crap about doing this thing. I think it wasn't this, like I said, generous reading. I'm sure the sources were generous and kind to Kushner, or maybe Kushner's the source, maybe Ivanka's the source. But the idea that he inserted himself more fully, they're trying to make it a backhanded thing. Oh, he only inserted himself more fully at the end. But he did so as he became increasingly convinced of what? They say that more tangible action was needed. I say increasingly became convinced that he could be influential, that there was going to be a big White House Oval Office speech and he would be able to write it and craft the policy that everyone was going to pay attention to. Oh, it means something? We're going to do something important? Then I will go to the meetings. I think somewhere parked in pocket is the report I saw yesterday that across Twitter, the screen grab was quite obvious about this, that he's been on this task force and he's been blowing it off the whole time. Let me continue with the post, though. He supported Trump's decision to ban most travel from Europe for 30 days and has pushed for further concrete steps, some of which are expected to be announced in the coming days, officials said. By the way, I have wondered whether did it hurt Stephen Miller to ban travel from Europe? I mean, I guess it makes a certain amount of sense in terms of like spreading, containing the spread of the virus. Yes. But I mean, he wanted to ban travel from China, which they've done, but probably a whole bunch of other Asian countries, African countries, South America, I'm sure. But I wonder whether it hurt to admit that the problem was Europe. There was some frustration among other White House aides at the sudden involvement of Kushner, who sucks, who they viewed as simply parachuting in and whose vast portfolio, including Middle East peace negotiations, immigration, and the re-election campaign, has been the subject of mockery in some circles. All circles. The travel ban has been criticized by some experts for being largely ineffectual at this point, considering that the virus has already spread throughout the United States, as well as the fact that Trump exempted the United Kingdom, meaning anyone trying to fly to America from Europe could simply get to London first. Absolutely true. Where are you coming from? The UK. Where are you, if they bother even asking you, where you been? In Italy for 6 weeks, Well, but you started out, all right, whatever. Tom Bossert, Trump's former Homeland Security advisor, was sharply critical of the measures, saying it would have been helpful earlier, but now the key focus should be on community mitigation, such as closing schools or quarantining sick individuals. That's definitely true. And so, of course, the problem is that the sick individuals actually work in the White House. That's the biggest issue. Okay, let's see. Where were we with this? Right, we're a little bit late on the music, so we'll cut out a little earlier than usual. But there's little value to European travel restrictions, Bossert tweeted Thursday morning. Poor use of time and energy. On NBC's Today Show, Thursday morning host Savannah Guthrie read Pence. You know what? We'll take our break here and be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, many other. What do we got here? A lot of interesting input here. Let me. I just before I continue with the article here, even though I stopped in almost mid-sentence. Important-ish update to something that we mentioned the other day. You'll recall that there was an interesting tweet we grabbed about. Hey, who's the world leader here? Who's the superpower? The United States is cutting itself off from everybody and banning travel from Europe. The Chinese are sending doctors and ventilators to Italy. Well, here's an alternative take on this. Very interesting. I'm glad for having this input. Anna Fifield, is that how she pronounces it? It's certainly how it looks. China is portraying itself as a magnanimous and trustworthy global leader in the coronavirus response. For example, sending ventilators to Italy. Turns out they're exports with purchase deals, not donations. And, it's great that they're selling, that they have them available to sell to Italy. But, right, it's not a donation. It's exports, maybe even previously scheduled, but I don't know. But they bought them. It's not quite as altruistic as it was originally portrayed. That's certainly the case. And reminds me a little bit of the Saudi Arabian arms deals and other purchases after the state visit right away early on in the Trump presidency, and they came away. And so we have this huge deal, but they actually already had a lot of that deal in place. They were already being sold, and they just reconfirmed that they would sell them the things that they had asked for before. Well, there's a whole article that goes along with it that Anna Fifield filed for the Washington Post. She's apparently the Beijing correspondent. And interesting headline. Under fire over coronavirus response, China turns to a familiar fall guy, Trump. And I guess they see a tremendous opportunity even in the face of their own enormous challenges, and which include being unfairly, perhaps, blamed for the origin of the virus in the first place. And certainly the Trump speech certainly sought to lay blame at their feet. But even if he hadn't, the Chinese are, quite adept at recognizing how dumb Donald Trump is and using this as an opportunity to make themselves into a global leader in ways that they wouldn't be able to ordinarily under competent administration of the United States. Perhaps we'll get over to that, but I've got more to get through here. Back to the Washington Post's discussion of the speech bomb. We were about to launch into what happened on the NBC Today show Thursday morning, where host Savannah Guthrie read Pence, who's overseeing the administration's coronavirus response, not Jared Kushner, a snippet of a Trump tweet in which the president accused, quote, the fake news media and their partner, the Democrat Party, remember we're all supposed to come together and get past politics, of trying to inflame the coronavirus situation. There's been some irresponsible rhetoric, the vice president told Guthrie, before going on to praise Trump for his concern for the health and well-being of the American public. It was initially unclear if Pence was perhaps criticizing his boss for the president's own irresponsible rhetoric. No way. But when asked, an aide to the vice president quickly insisted that he was not. He meant all the other irresponsible people who were being irresponsible for saying the president had been irresponsible. Got it? Okay. So, Kushner. What the F with this guy? Okay, what do I mean? You've probably seen it by now. Let's see. Where did I even park this thing at this point? Here it is. I first saw this tweet. I don't know who put it in my timeline, but Gary Legum, who is, let's see, where does he write? Everywhere. Let's see. His profile says The Contemptor, IJR, Salon, Wonkat, Daily Beast, Alternate, McSweeney's. You get the idea. But Gary Legum put this one out there. Not his piece, I don't think. He's looking at something from The Spectator, which I grabbed also. Is it his piece? I better credit him properly if it is. It's not, so I'm off the hook. Matt McDonald gets the credit for the piece, but the catch to Gary Legum, who says, this is absolutely incredible. And it's a spoiler. Ready for the spoiler in case we don't get through the whole article? What's incredible? Jared Kushner has the entire federal government at his disposal. Every health crisis organization on the planet at his beck and call. And his brother's father-in-law is doing pandemic response research for him on Facebook. That's the upshot of it. How could that possibly be? Well, if you haven't read the article already, I will tell you. This exclusive piece from the spectator.us. Carly Kloss's dad helped Jared with coronavirus, scare quotes, research. Kurt Kloss asked a doctor's Facebook group with over 20,000 members for tips. This is a hell of a story. We'll begin with this. Who is Carly Kloss? I don't know. She's a supermodel, essentially, and that's all I know about her. I don't know. She's a model, and you know how these things go. Maybe this is a jealously guarded designation, supermodel. And I see I must have hit a paywall on this one. So I'll go back to the pocket version of it. And it goes like this. Jared Kushner has a lot on his plate. It doesn't look like he eats any of it, though. The White House senior advisor was tasked this week, believe it or not, with conducting research into the coronavirus to help Trump decide whether to declare a national emergency. You know what? No research necessary. Yes is the answer. I suppose reading the newspaper is research, but I mean, I've already done that, so I'd be a much better White House senior advisor. But I wouldn't advise Donald Trump unless it was to say, I think you should fall down a well. That's what I think is the best response. According to Politico, Kushner is talking to, quote, relevant parties. That would be a great thing to do, right? And will, quote, present his findings to the president. That is, boilerplate. It appears that one of these relevant parties is an emergency room doctor, and that's not a bad place to get some information, right? An emergency room doctor called Kurt Kloss, father of, yes, Carly Kloss, but who cares, right? This is the father of Jared's sister-in-law, Carly. That is to say, his brother, Josh, is married to Carly Kloss. Good for you. She's a supermodel or whatever, and that's great because we value physical appearance over everything in this country. So hooray. Very American of you. And Dr. Kloss sought the advice of other medical professionals on Kushner's behalf in a Facebook group with almost 22,000 members, which is awesome for national security and stuff like that. If you were in charge of federal response to the pandemic, what would your recommendation be? Kloss wrote in the private group yesterday, according to screenshots provided to The Spectator. Please, only serious responses. That's good. I mean, if you were in charge of the pandemic response, what would your response be? Wrong answers only. You can do that on Twitter, but on Facebook they say serious responses only. I have a direct channel to person now in charge at White House. He's in such a rush to get this great information that he's dropping conjunctions and articles left and right to get this valuable information out there. I have direct channel to, or maybe he's Russian. I have direct channel to person now in charge at White House. Maybe. And although apparently he's Dracula rather than a Russian guy. And I have that problem a lot. And anyway, so he's been asked for recommendations. I have already expressed concern for need for ventilators and more PPE, personal protective equipment, for frontline and test kits. So, all right. What else? I mean, okay, so that's his Facebook message. And here's some screenshots of some of the answers. And they're good answers. I mean, he's asking doctors, I guess, and that's fine and all, but it's like you couldn't ask doctors. I mean, Jared, I want you to do a thing for me, and I want you to check out the whole coronavirus thing. And I want to give a speech. So I mean, I think this is probably in preparation for the speech. What should I say in the speech? And Jared, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And it's his thing is, who would I need to ask about what to do about a virus? Doctors. Where can I find a doctor? There's a Surgeon General. Nah, that guy's an idiot. There's a White House doctor. Oh, those are sycophants we hired to say that the president is 239 pounds. I have a doctor. Ivanka might have a doctor. Where can we find a doctor? Get a White House switchboard. Find me a doctor. Whatever. Call 1-800 urgent care. Anything. But say, I got it. Josh's father-in-law is a doctor. I should ask him. That's literally what he did. Hey, what should we do if you were trying to advise the president? Because I am. But if you were, and you weren't a clueless moron, what would you do for advice? Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to ask my Facebook group. I don't know whether they agreed that he should ask his Facebook group or shouldn't. Or maybe, it's possible Jared thought, well, he's a doctor. He'll just tell me. But instead, I'll do you one better. I'll ask all my doctor friends. All right. But did he say on Facebook? Because I don't know. It's possible Jared might have said, yeah, no, don't do it on Facebook. Jeez. But I don't know. Maybe they didn't have that part of the conversation. So here's some good answers. They block out the person's face and name and all that because you would be so embarrassed to be giving good information to Jared Kushner. Aggressive ramping up of testing capabilities / production of the tests. That's 1. 2, rapid increase of production of ventilators. Nationalize a factory if need be. Aren't we socialist? My goodness. Control the means of production. Which brings us to another interesting point about this point in time. People have certainly been noticing it, that some solutions that progressives and socialists and liberals alike have in some cases been agreeing and pushing for various things, but have seemed like pipe dreams in the last couple of years, really coming to the fore here. And another a point that a lot of you would be upset about, but it was an interesting one being made. Wolfram made it on Twitter, pointing out, we had a real moment here. This coronavirus could have been a huge moment for pushing some really serious lefty priorities. Workers, sick leave, nationalizing a factory. I don't know if we would even, I don't even know if Bernie Sanders would sign on to that. That's a good one. Interesting. But a huge opening here, and really a shame that Bernie Sanders isn't in a position to capitalize on that. Not for himself, not it's us, not him, right? But anybody could. I mean, I guess the moment still exists. I don't think that Joe Biden would grab it and say, this is a great moment to move left. That's not what he's like. It's unfortunate. It could have been somebody else, but whatever. All right. Well, anyway, this one guy's first couple suggestions. More tests, more ventilators. 3, this is an interesting one. Activate the National Guard and set up free testing sites for aggressive testing and identification of the sick so that isolation can occur. And 4, return funding to the NIH/CDC. To allow for research into vaccine and treatments. I mean, point 4A, return the funding that you cut because you suck at running countries. But all right, you want the job done. You can't insult them. You move forward. Very basic, right? Interesting response here, though. Somebody else says, I'm in the National Guard. If you activate me, you're going to take me away from my community and the ability to care for them. I'm in a small city with only 9 ER docs. Although, maybe not. But, I mean, if you're in a small city with only 9 ER docs and you're activated, maybe they would deploy you right there to your own city. But I don't know. It's a good point. Well worth bringing up. Anyway, those are the screenshots that they featured. Many of the doctors in the group were forthcoming with suggestions, the article continues, but some expressed skepticism. For transparency, I will provide some background about my unique circumstance. I have not shared this in a professional forum before, Dr. Kloss clarifies. And how does he get doctors to become more forthcoming? And I think it's easy to see maybe how Karlie Kloss, this is really generalizing here, and I'm being totally unfair to these people, but how does Karlie Kloss fall in with a Kushner who falls in with Trump's? And maybe the apple started by not falling in far from the tree. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about Karlie Kloss. Totally unfair. But here's what Dr. Kloss says. In case you don't understand why I'm asking you for this information. Our daughter, Karlie Kloss, parentheses, ready? One of the top models in the world. 45 Vogue covers and counting. Proud dad commentary. I mean, you can be proud, obviously. Maybe this isn't the place to count how many Vogue covers. And very Trumpian. You're one of the top models in the world. She's a total supermodel. Number 1 model in the world. 45 Vogue covers and counting. Okay. Anyway, she's married to Mr. Joshua Kushner. His brother is Mr. Jared Kushner, son-in-law to the president, and who is now directly involved with the response to this. I have been, over the past 2 weeks, expressing our concern through Josh about the lack of PPE availability and how effective it has been, sir. Josh, I want you to call your brother Jared and tell him, Jared doesn't care. Anyway, so he's been expressing it for 2 weeks. The frustration of not being able to test, and especially to ensure enough ventilators. Tonight I was asked by Jared through my son-in-law for my recommendations. That's why I turned to you guys, my fellow Baffords, for help. Now, I don't know how they say that or if they ever pronounce it out loud. B-A-F-E-R-D. Baffords. Don't ask me. It's an acronym that they made up for themselves. Because they're ER docs. It's Bafford is an acronym for Badass Effing Emergency Room Doctor, which is hilarious, of course, because emergency room doctors, Greg assures me, refer to it as the emergency department, not the emergency room. It's not the ER, it's the ED, but maybe Baffed isn't funny enough. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. And by the way, he writes, my fellow Baffords, apostrophe S, possessive, not plural, and whatever. He's a doctor. He doesn't have to know about grammar. So there you go. Between patients tonight, I have reviewed your responses and will summarize what I am sending to Jared for your peer, and it's all capitalized for some reason, peer review before I send it. Well, he says sent it. Dr. Kloss continues, unfortunately, my patients are not cooperating. They're too sick, and I have to pay more attention to them than helping Jared Kushner do his homework. I hope to have this posted before I go to bed later this morning. In the almost 30 years of training for and practicing, and for some reason all caps, emergency medicine, I have not been afraid until today. In other posts, Kloss asks for a name and contact for disaster medicine leader and thoughts on how to best utilize EMS in response. In other words, Jared Kushner says, I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I'd ask you, but you don't know what you're doing. I need a disaster medicine leader, recognized leader in disaster medicine. Is that even, I understand what they're getting at, but they capitalize it like it's a field, and maybe it's not. But basically, the question is, I don't know what I'm talking about. You guys really don't know what you're talking about. Jared certainly doesn't know what he's talking about. Do we have an expert that we can recommend? That's not a bad thing on the whole, except seeing it exposed like this and seeing it being sought, on a Facebook forum, 45 Vogue covers and counting, is not very reassuring. So let's see. Please, thoughts on how to best utilize EMS in response. Here's some responses he got, by the way. Need to depend on them to triage at home and only transport people with concerning vital signs or appearance with URI. Keep the well people home. Agree with above comments. EMS needs to be empowered in this case. And another comment saying, we need 911 operators to ask screening questions. Of course, you can just hand them a list, right? You got to train people a little bit, but no. If emergent, EMS can use proper PPE and need it available. I guess they need the PPE available. If non-emergent, a home health nurse could be dispatched to do screening, call physician, initiate treatment from a patient's home, again in proper PPE. Then establishment of testing locations that are separate from the main ED, and work closely through home health to keep people home / out of the ED / out of pharmacies / out of the community. All right. The doctor summarizes the group's suggestions in an 11-point list, which he also posted on his publicly viewable Facebook profile, which, you're soliciting advice as widely as possible. But again, it's not like it's a national security thing here, but it's a little weird. All right, but here's his summary. And we didn't see it until this reporter did, so it's not like it was out in full view. Thoughts so far. 1, nationalize, as in wartime production of PPEs, testing kits, and ventilators. Wow. 2, suspend EMTALA, EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. Don't know. Can't comment. Activate FEMA, of course, and DMAT teams. There's more. Number 4, now the screen cap is available. Number 4 is pop-up field hospitals with ICU capability. Israel seems to have expertise. 5, decentralizing testing away from hospital, or if in hospital, away from ED. 6, drive-through testing capability, and I would add pulse ox capability. Oxygen, presumably. 7, draconian travel restrictions. How did that get there? 8, canceling all mass gatherings. 9, massive marketing of PSA, explaining what patients to do, especially not going to ED if not in respiratory distress. Need to refine this message. 10, national telemedicine for screening. 11, locking down nursing homes. Require all caregivers in full gear and frequent testing. 12, use state ACEP for some sort of incident command structure. 13, use emergency funding to compensate quarantined. I got to turn this in now. I have got? Yes. A few hours after his previous posts, Dr. Kloss informs the group that Jared is reading now. 2 hours after that, he thanks the other doctors for their great recommendations and comments. I have to get some sleep. Lots of answers saying, thanks for doing this, da-da-da. Dr. Claus's daughter, Carly, and her husband, Josh Kushner, by the way, are both Democrats, so this is supposed to be okay now, I guess, somehow. In a recent interview with Vogue, Carly described being related to Jared and Ivanka as hard and said, I choose to focus on the values that I share with my husband, and those are the same liberal values that I was raised with and that have guided me throughout my life. So her commentary is that if her apple didn't, in fact, fall far from the tree, that it was a liberal tree. And after all, this is a valuable thing, a valuable service to help the idiot son-in-law with coronavirus response, because, who knows what kind of answer he would get otherwise. And you don't have to be a conservative doctor to respond to a request for help with coronavirus, even if it's coming from the Trump administration. And you don't have to be Trump-like to be proud of your daughter having 45 Vogue covers either. That's true. I mean, I think anybody should be proud of anybody should be proud of their daughter, period. Even if you have 0 Vogue covers. But you know what I'm saying. Okay, that's a bragging point, etc. And not a bad response there from Carly either. Recognizing right away that there still needs to be some distance put between her and the Trump White House. And a solid statement. Look, I focus on the values I share with my husband. That's who's important to me. The fact that Josh Kushner is Jared Kushner's brother has nothing to do with what I did. I don't, whatever. I don't know whether she likes him or not, whatever. So, all right, fine statement there. The White House didn't return a request for comment on this. Of course, President Trump depends on his son-in-law for everything. But it says here, for assistance with the most pressing issues of government. At present, Jared is attempting to negotiate peace between Israel and Palestine, which is just crazy. Building the wall, tackling the opioid epidemic, reducing mass incarceration, and overhauling the federal bureaucracy. With such a long to-do list, can Kushner really be blamed for seeking help? That's, it's an appropriate question. Even if it does result in a boomer crowdsourcing advice on a Facebook group that could inform U.S. government policy. Thank God someone in the administration is seeing a doctor. It's just interesting is all I'm saying. And I'm glad I was able to share it with you. And sorry that we all have to live in this country this way. I don't know. There's not too much more I can add to that. All right, let me see. Other things that need to be shared here. We are coming up on our third break. There are many out there. I mentioned that people had laid the responsibility for the speech at the feet of Kushner and Miller earlier than the piece I read. And the Wall Street Journal apparently has a piece, but that one's behind a paywall, so you can't read it. But I did see that Michael Bender, who I believe might even have had the byline on the piece, is describing it here on Twitter. And his story begins, it says, the speech was based on extensive dictation from POTUS, basically him just winging it, and suggestions from Pence, who told colleagues that insurance execs had promised in a private meeting to waive co-payments for coronavirus treatments. And that's just not true. Those companies dispute that claim. And it may just be that they said what they said and Pence didn't understand. Or it's really amazing how many high-level policymakers very often either, I don't know, sometimes they want to hear something different, but they may not actually understand the difference between co-payments and, all payments, or between treatment versus testing. And they both start with T, so, and Pence is dumb. So I guess it's possible to make this mistake. Anyway, it was written, he says, largely by Stephen Miller and Jared Kushner, just as we suspected, and overseen by Staff Secretary Derek Lyons. I don't think we've heard that name often or ever, perhaps. The three men, all White House staffers since day one, haven't been deeply involved in the coronavirus response. There hasn't been much to be deeply involved in. It hasn't been around long. Mr. Kushner hasn't attended a single task force meeting. That's where that came from. according to one official who has attended each meeting and so would therefore likely be in a position to know about that, but maybe they're lying too. Many of the officials who have been working on the issue for weeks said they were cut out or ignored during the speech writing. I can actually imagine that very easily, and I think the resulting speech is pretty good evidence that might actually have been what happened, because it was a terrible speech. A few more tidbits and maybe some larger stories that we'll have time for after we return from this break. Be right back. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Golly, I just saw a awful news clip go by. Bobby Lewis, writing for Media Matters, or monitoring things for Media Matters for America and writing this, grabbed this clip from, what is it, the morning Fox stuff. Is that Fox and Friends? Brian Kilmeade, is that where he's parked? Being racist. And, that's what you do on Fox News. Again, going to the racist well, calling this the Wuhan virus that poisoned the world. That's what you get when you get Chinese trade. What? And that's what the American companies should keep in mind when you cut these deals. Very interesting, because there's going to be a large segment of the population that actually, if not buys into this argument, there's a lot of distrust of Chinese trade deals, to be sure. But remember that, I don't even know how to put it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of Trump fans who feel the same way, but Trump is very pro-China in trade, although, I mean, he's had a trade war with them, but he keeps going back and suspending things and or bailing out the farmers and other industries who are negatively affected by. He's got a very weird approach to China, and I was just saying, I don't know if there's enough, beautiful Mar-a-Lago chocolate cake in the world to fix this. Not that they'll necessarily attribute it to Trump, but it's just amazing, and it maybe just forget Trump in it. It stands alone as a testament to Fox racism. And that you can just leave it at that. But wow, it's pretty amazing, is all I can say. By the way, all right, so let's see. A couple other bits and pieces I wanted to add to all of this. One, the tweet I saw last night from Michael Grunwald, Politico writer, and I don't know what book it was that he had written, but referencing his own book with a picture taken on his phone of the page in his book, reminding us all of what he had done. He says, I had forgotten in my own reporting for this book that Susan Collins stripped $870 million for pandemic preparations out of the 2009 stimulus package. You all remember that. And I had seen somebody commenting on Michael's tweet saying, it might have been, I can't remember. I'm sorry to whoever it was, but somebody saying, keep this in mind. I mean, she's running for re-election. This is going to be murderous for her re-election, that she's personally responsible for almost $1 billion of pandemic preparation money disappearing. How so? This photo of the page of Grunwald's book, I don't remember which book, that is. But maybe that was it. I guess the one that comes up in his tweets is the New Deal, the hidden story of change and the Obama era. Might be the book he's referencing. Anyway, the page reads, let's see, where shall we start with this one? I'll give a little context, extra context that is not meant to be the major part of it, but it appears on the page here. Something recalls Senator Byron Dorgan of North Dakota, a member of Reid's leadership team who attended the talks. It was just, what are you willing to support? We had to get to yes. So this is about the fight to get enough Republicans to get out of the way and vote for cloture on the filibuster of the stimulus package. And you remember what that was and who it was that they were approaching on that one. They needed what they got. So Susan Collins is one of them. Olympia Snowe was one of them. Was two all they needed? I can't even remember. But, there was this famous cadre of supposedly moderate Republicans who could be wooed into voting for cloture so the stimulus package could go on. And there were just enormous concessions made to them. And they put Dorgan and to a large extent, Joe Lieberman in charge of negotiating with them to get to yes. So here's the real meat of it. By late evening, the group had hashed out $110 billion in cuts, about half in education, with a final goal of slimming the package to $780 billion. Remember that the proposal was much larger. And then it was like, at a minimum, the Democrats were saying it really should be like $1 trillion stimulus package. But then everybody got so afraid of the $1 trillion price tag that they just, whatever it was, they needed to whittle it down so that it was still in the billions, not a trillion. No one wanted to vote for anything with a T in it. So they had to whittle it down. But of course, then once the ball got rolling, Collins, I guess in particular, got excited about the idea of, saving billions and billions of dollars here. She thought she'd be able to run on that for re-election. And now I hope it'll kill her chances. Among other things, it should kill her chances. But here it is. So by late evening, they'd hash out $110 billion in cuts, slimming the final package to $780 billion. Collins insisted on deleting the entire $16 billion for school construction, a presidential priority. We're going to make him a one-term president. So that was her contribution to the Mitch McConnell goal right out of the box. $16 billion for school construction. We're spending that, we're building schools in Iraq, but we're not doing it here. Screw you. Why? Because it's a presidential priority. Lieberman tried to broker some middle ground, but Collins wouldn't budge. So Lieberman, I love it. He's in there. He's just effective in getting it done. He builds bridges to the other side. Collins, F you, no. So his excuse here, look, she wasn't going for it, Lieberman says. So what could we do? Collins declared pandemic flu preparations a non-starter, but Lieberman persuaded her to shift that $870 million to community health clinics rather than kill it outright. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. I mean, it wasn't where the money was supposed to go, but again, Joe justifies it by saying, I hope they have that on my list of good deeds when I get to the gates of heaven, he says. And, the rest of it goes on. The deal also whacked over $40 billion in state education aid, and then I can't see anymore. But there you have it. So this is the deal. $870 million for pandemic preparations. I'm glad that community health clinics got money. They needed it, I'm sure. But there you go. Almost $1 billion in 2009. Where could we be now? But for that, we'll never know. But we will know the joy of taking it out viscerally on Susan Collins and turning her out immediately, most ignominiously if possible. She should be absolutely destroyed and never speak in public again. That's my judgment. And that doesn't even get to the rest of the garbage for which she should be likewise held accountable. I hope this is the end for her. All right, Let's see. For some of you who were following along with the comments yesterday, I will include, I think, some roundups on what the hell did I mean by the weirdos who are out there buying gold and eating silver. It's really true. They actually do eat silver solution, colloidal silver. I have a story about it that I can share with you briefly and include in the roundup, and then a page on like actual info from NIH about colloidal silver. Why would people be eating silver? And there's a real answer. I mean, it's not a good answer, but there's a real answer. But here's the deal. Here's why people are eating silver. The bad reason. A recent story. Missouri, the state of Missouri, is suing televangelist, and he still is a televangelist, believe it or not, Jim Baker, for selling fake coronavirus cure. And that's basically it. Eat silver. It will cure you. Does that sound dumb or crazy? It is dumb or crazy. I mean, have this snake. You will have a religious experience. That also is dumb. I'm sorry, and it's religious bigotry for me to say so, but I don't know. To me, it feels like I don't like snakes. So I'm entitled to my own opinion, perhaps, on that one. All right, back to the actual story. Matthew Schwartz writing for NPR here about this Jim Baker story. Televangelist Jim Baker held up a blue and silver bottle, gazing intently at the label, as he questioned the woman sitting next to him. This influenza, which it isn't, that is now circling the globe, Baker said on the February 12th broadcast of the Jim Baker Show. You're saying that silver solution would be effective. His guest, the so-called natural health expert Cheryl Selman, falsely implied that the liquid would likely be effective. The coronavirus, impacting more than 120,000 people worldwide, does not yet have a known treatment or cure. Well, let's say it hasn't been tested on this strain of the coronavirus, but it's been tested on other strains of the coronavirus, and it has been able to eliminate it within 12 hours, Selman said. Totally eliminate it. Kills it. Deactivates it. Silver solution, quote, has been proven by the government that it has the ability to kill every pathogen it has ever been tested on, including SARS and HIV, Selman continued. 4 4-ounce bottles could be yours, a message on the screen said, for just $80. And by the way, what's syntax, right? Silver solution has been proven by the government that it has the ability to kill. It's just poorly stated, but also untrue. Selling a fake treatment for the COVID-19 disease violates state and federal law. On Tuesday, the state of Missouri filed a lawsuit against Baker and his production company to stop them from advertising or selling silver solution and related products as treatments for the coronavirus. Baker and Morningside Church Productions have violated Missouri law by falsely promising consumers that silver solution can cure, eliminate, kill, or deactivate coronavirus and or boost elderly consumers' immune system and help keep them healthy when there is, in fact, no vaccine, pill, potion, or other product available to treat or cure coronavirus disease 2019. The Missouri Attorney General's office wrote in its application for a temporary restraining order. Baker and his company are based in the state, which is why they had to do it. In case you don't remember this, Baker gained fame in the 1970s and 80s as the host of the PTL Club, a Christian television program he hosted with his then-wife Tammy Faye Baker. Remember her? He stepped down from PTL after a sex scandal. Can you believe it? And later spent several years in prison after a jury found that he had defrauded his viewers out of millions of dollars. I know. Surprising, right? Missouri is the first state to file a lawsuit against him for selling his coronavirus, quote, treatment, but others have been warning him to stop peddling his snake oil. There's snakes again. Poor snakes. On March 3rd, the New York Attorney General's office sent a cease and desist letter to Baker accusing him of defrauding the public. There's much more, but you get the idea. And I'll also just share with you a page, like I said, from the National Institutes of Health that will tell you, like, what is this stuff and why did it get created and is there a real use for it? And there is, and it's just not this. So, just thought I would point that out. And but yes, people are actually consuming the elemental metal, silver, thinking that it will cure really anything. So I don't know what to tell you. It's a real thing, and we're real sad about it. let's see. Where to next? So much that I could give you for reading if we don't get to it. But things you want to know. And joining the ranks of those mocking coronavirus, but who you should keep an eye on because they're old. Senator James Inhofe of Oklahoma, 85 years old. And I saw just the other day on Twitter, Josh Barone, New York Times, pointing out that when a reporter in the Capitol asked Senator Inhofe, who's 85 years old again, what precautions he was taking to protect himself against the COVID-19, he said none and extended his arm with confidence. Wanna shake hands? So there you go. That's who's in charge of response. And that's why we are where we are with this stuff. It's a political statement to not believe in science or to believe that this infectious disease that's really hurting a lot of people is a serious thing. Oh, well, let's see. Also, I guess, from the immediate aftermath of the speech, I think. Let's see. What have I grabbed along the way that I didn't get to share that might still be of some interest here? Well, that one we've figured out. All right, let me head back up in the other direction, but also make you aware of an interesting sounding Washington Post opinion piece Brian Klaas has put out. I love the headline. Interesting, attention grabbing. The coronavirus is Trump's Chernobyl. How do you like that? That's an interesting comparison. We've been doing the Trump's Katrina thing for a long time, but that was Puerto Rico. Now, Trump's got a Chernobyl on his hand. And we did say that some of this stuff was like the most Chernobyl-like response we'd ever heard. You couldn't have, we're not going to test you for coronavirus because you can't have coronavirus because you wore the protective gear, and protective gear protects against coronavirus. So no testing for you. We'd just rather not know, I guess. All right. Let's see. There's a couple other things up here. Yes, no. All right. You know what? Now let me scroll back down and see what we've been missing for the last couple of days. There's such clutter here. It's amazing. There is a non-coronavirus story or two out there that requires some discussion. And let's see. That we'll save for another day. I'm having to screen these things live and on the air. It's an interesting. Oh yes. Okay. So some interesting postmortems on the Bloomberg candidacy that I will just tease you with, and then perhaps share it with you for reading over the weekend on your own. A piece in The Nation, Ken Klippenstein. How do you like this headline about, again, postmortem on the Bloomberg campaign? This was a grift. I mean, I guess a lot of people could have guessed that. Bloomberg staffers explain his campaign's demise. When Elizabeth Warren embarrassed Bloomberg on the debate stage, his lackluster campaign was effectively over. But an interesting premise here. Michael Bloomberg ended his presidential campaign on Wednesday, last week, after being walloped on Super Tuesday. But according to more than a dozen members of his campaign staff, the former New York City mayor's presidential dreams really died when Elizabeth Warren eviscerated his record on live television during the February 19th debate. Not a single Bloomberg staffer that I spoke to was surprised by the campaign's implosion. Speaking on condition of anonymity for fear of professional reprisal and because the campaign's non-disclosure agreements, which The Nation obtained a leaked copy of in February, campaign employees cited that bruising debate as well as the general lack of, everything, I guess. But here the firewall kicks in, and let's see, does the pocket version of it pass by it? In fact, it does. But cited the bruising debate as well as lack of enthusiasm for Bloomberg among the staff as main factors ending his presidential run. The long story, very short here, it seems to me that it turns out that a lot of people who signed on for the Bloomberg campaign, top to bottom really, were essentially, more in it for the money than is usually the case with campaign mercenaries. It really looked like well, we were hearing those strange emerging stories even of like lower level people, volunteers, right? Door knockers saying, knocking on people's doors and saying, blah, 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 Mike Bloomberg. Anecdotally, I had seen this on Twitter too, and somebody saying, nah, no thanks. I'm actually voting for Bernie Sanders. And the story went that the door knocker, a young guy, said, oh, cool, me too, and fist bumps him and leaves. Like, I'm just doing this. I guess he wasn't a volunteer. He must have been getting paid, right? Everybody was getting paid on that campaign. But I guess more mercenaries than is ordinarily the case. And I guess it just left a hollow campaign, and that's kind of part of how it fell apart. Plus, of course, it just didn't make any sense to anybody. All right. Let's see. Other things. I mean, maybe now would be a great time to do the coronavirus as Trump's Chernobyl, if I can say it that way. Why not? It makes good sense to me. That's a hell of a headline. Maybe we ought to read that. And it's not exactly feel good, but we feel good about saying that Trump is bad. So maybe that's a great way to end on Friday. We're at a loss in the face of this coronavirus. Okay, on Saturday, April 26th, 1986, I didn't realize it was a Saturday. Thank you for telling me, Brian. The number 4 reactor at Chernobyl power station exploded, even though they said it didn't, just outside the town of Pripyat in the Soviet Union. During the crucial early hours of the disaster, a cascading series of mistakes exacerbated the emergency. It's not that I don't know, maybe Brian Klaas remembers this personally, but we all watched the show and we're basing it on that. And that was pretty good. Subordinates who feared their superiors kept quiet. Superiors who feared contradicting the prevailing mythology of the state and its leader bent and broke reality. They made a series of smaller lies to protect the big lie, that the Soviet Union had everything under control. During crises, ideology kills. Protecting myths rather than people is deadly. And it is said that the producers of the Chernobyl miniseries may even have had that in mind with respect to the Trump administration when they made it. The rapidly worsening coronavirus outbreak is President Trump's Chernobyl, which also gets a phew. By putting dangerous myths above objective facts, Trump has turned the crucial early phases of government response into a disaster. Some public health experts in government have undoubtedly kept quiet, having seen repeatedly what happens to those who publicly contradict this president, and Trump himself, along with those who surround him, has tried to construct a reality that simply does not exist. Those lies will kill. And that has to be put in exactly that form. It's absolutely true. And I keep advocating, by the way, on Twitter, and you've probably seen it. I might as well make mention of it here. We're getting really close to just like the pitchfork and torches moment here, especially when it looked like the Senate was going to recess without dealing with the coronavirus and go home. I was just, they're coming home to your state. Meet them at the airport if it wasn't for the fact that you're supposed to avoid crowds. And honestly, I mean, the commentary that comes to mind keeps running into Secret Service problems. I keep wanting to say, like, we need to invite we're on good terms with the British again. Maybe we can invite them back. Let's redo the War of 1812. It's like, burn this monster out of the White House already. Except that's bad, and we don't want to lose wars, and fire is dangerous, and yada, yada, and you're not supposed to advocate for, endangering the president, right? So we're not doing that. So your better judgment gets a hold of you. But honestly, I mean, this is what the tar and feather thing was supposed to be about. These guys need to be dragged out. But you're not allowed to do that. 2 weeks ago, I'll get back to this. 2 weeks ago today, which was a couple days ago when he wrote this thing, Trump tweeted that, quote, the coronavirus is very much under control in the United States. Stock market is starting to look very good to me. That aged well. How garbage is that? At that point, there were a small number of cases, but public health experts clearly stated that the number was likely to spike. Nonetheless, Trump accused his critics of perpetrating a hoax and said their concerns were overblown. He said that the number of cases, 15 at the time, would very soon be close to zero. How was that, right? Today, and that was days ago, there are more than 500 cases. Soon there will be thousands, and there are thousands now. Yet every new infection was viewed through the prism of political self-interest. Every warning was dismissed as media hype. Crucial hours and days ticked by without the urgent action that was needed. Early on, Public health experts and frontline doctors began ringing alarm bells. Testing kits weren't available, even for high-risk cases that were showing matching symptoms to COVID-19. Trump responded by meeting with Fox News media performers Diamond and Silk at the White House. Vote red, R-E-D, Diamond said. Remove every Democrat. Trump nodded and smiled right there at the White House. The stock market is crashing. Every indicator from bonds market predicts a serious recession. The death rate's climbing. And if the outbreak in Italy is any indication of what we should expect, everything is about to get much worse. Trump played golf yesterday. This, I guess, would have been around Monday, right? Worse, he also admitted that his thinking is at least partially influenced by trying to keep the numbers of cases low. It was an acknowledgement that the big lie that everything is fine and Trump has it under control was what was worth protecting. Reactors don't explode. Anyone who wants a test can get a test. The Soviet Union made no mistakes. The U.S. government response to the coronavirus has been perfect. So far, Trump has been able to glide through crises of his own making because his base of support has often believed him over reality. When fact checkers expose Trump's lies, many of his supporters distrust the fact checkers, not the liar. The coronavirus is different. Spin won't make dead bodies disappear. Recessions can't be warded off with a blistering tweet in all capital letters. You can't blame Hillary Clinton for hospital overcrowding. The Trump playbook works when everything else is working. It falls apart when the world is falling apart. In August of 1986, after the disaster, Soviet scientists finally acknowledged that the reactor type and service at Chernobyl had a design flaw that could cause a nuclear disaster. They had been aware of it for 9 years, but nothing was done. Who would have thought? Trump asked during his recent visit to the CDC. In fact, public health experts have been warning for years that this would happen, like Greg. The threat of pandemic flu is the number one health security concern. One official in the White House's Global Health Security Unit warned early in the Trump administration, are we ready to respond? I fear the answer is no. The following day, Trump shut that office in a reorganization. With Chernobyl, as with Trump's response to the coronavirus, efforts to protect the big lie were always doomed. It was impossible to simply lie and cover up the nuclear disaster, but that didn't stop the Soviet Union from trying. It is impossible to pretend that people dying in increasing numbers is a hoax, or that an inadequate supply of testing kits is part of a perfect government response. But that hasn't stopped Trump from trying. For years, it's been obvious that having a president as self-aggrandizing liar who constructs his own reality is dangerous. We're about to find out just how deadly it can be. And that's all there is to it. That's actually true, and that's the way you ought to be thinking about it. He's murdering Americans. Don't be afraid to say it. And anyway, okay, so that about wraps it up. I guess I'll just tell you as we exit here my own personal story, more personal news to end the show. But I've been called upon, or I was called upon yesterday as part of the board for my small house of worship, my little temple in this corner of the world. I'm on the board there. And we had to make some decisions about whether or not we were going to be holding services and closing the Sunday school, etc. It was really tough because the rabbi really wanted to go forward with this stuff. And, who can blame her? This is her thing, right? You take away services and Sunday school, and, well, that's everything she does. And she had a realistic point of view in that she was saying, well, the warning is not to have large crowds gathering. And we're not a large crowd. Even for services, we don't get a large crowd. Couldn't we continue on? And what if we closed the classroom schooling for the young kids, but the older kids, were outside, went on a hike maybe, and we could talk about coronavirus preparedness even if we wanted to. What about stuff like that? But eventually it fell to us to decide what to do, and we decided, I think closing it down is really the thing to do. Not so much necessarily because we feared that the coronavirus was already among us, although that's probably the case, but because it was part of our community participation here. And that's kind of the way I cast it in making the decision. This is a communitarian thing here. We're doing our part for the larger community. And yes, as a religious institution, we say this is our way of doing our part to flatten that curve. And I noticed also an interesting tweet, Matt Purse, who had put this one out yesterday, and I hope Pierce Purse, never did find out, but I thought this was encapsulated here. He says, I imagine all the closures and cancellations give people a sense of ominousness, but it's really an amazing act of social solidarity. We're sacrificing so we can give nurses, doctors, and hospitals a fighting chance. Start from there, and hopefully we can figure out the rest. So maybe that's a better message for everybody to take off with them into this weekend. We'll see what emerges on Monday. But that's something to think about, even better than thinking about Trump's Chernobyl. Now, though, time for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I can only imagine what Justice Putnam has lined up for you. I don't have to imagine. It's all been written, but I've used all the time I had to tell you about my personal experience once again. So anyway, let me put it this way. It's fantastic, and you should stay tuned and listen. Maybe I can sneak in the best after this.
From Daily Co's Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, it's all summed up in his first paragraph here. Court precedent and federal law provides sweeping powers for the federal government to issue quarantines and other limits on citizens' rights during a legitimate public health crisis, but we shouldn't need the law to do what is right. Some philosophical thoughts on our way out the door. See you on Monday.